this video is to show you how to operate and use your electric winch system both properly and above all safely. Let's start first with installing a new wire rope onto a Super Winch Husky. Peter here is demonstrating laying out a brand new coil of wire rope out ahead of the winch vehicle. This is done so to avoid having kinks or twists in the rope once it is on the drum. By simply pulling a new rope directly from the center of a coil is definitely asking for trouble. Installing the rope, as Peter is showing you, will ensure that it lays evenly onto the drum. Take the tapered end of the wire rope through the roller fair leads, under and up behind the drum, placing the end into the hole provided. Secure the rope with the grub screw by tightening it with an Allen key. Keeping the gloved hands well clear of the roller fair leads, operate the winch to wind the rope onto the drum. However, as with nearly all wire ropes, or new wire ropes, they tend to be very springy when new. So tap the first few wraps into place with a soft-faced hammer. This will ensure that it sits onto the drum evenly, right from the start. Continue to wind all the rope onto the drum by holding it back slightly to one side, behind the direction that it is going onto the drum. This will ensure that the wraps are laying evenly, side by side. Always be very careful when taking the hook back to the winch vehicle so as not to trap a hand. The next job is to pre-stretch the new wire rope. Operate the free spool lever and take the hook end back down to a rolling load. Another vehicle is ideal for this, especially if you can winch it up a gradual slope like this. Before winching, always make sure you have half a dozen or so wraps of rope onto the drum to capstan the rope to the drum itself. Having made sure that the load vehicle is steering squarely up to the winch, pull it all the way up to pre-stretch and form the new wire rope onto the drum. Alternatively, you could winch yourself up a gradual slope to a ground anchor, a tree for instance. Naturally, before starting any winching operations, it's important to turn the cutout switch on, which couples the battery system to the winch itself. Always very important to have a battery cutout switch. Not only does it disconnect the winch system on the front of the vehicle when driving on road, but in an emergency you can cut all power. Quite important. If your vehicle hasn't got a cutout switch, then fit one soon. We're ready to winch. What is important as you start winching, don't get the remote lead to the hand control across the wire rope or across the roller fair leads. The safest way is to take the remote control handset cable round behind the aerial, maybe just once around the wing mirror bracket itself, then come back to the front, and then it's all safe. Even better doing that when you're winching and driving, when you have the hand control in with you. As with all electric winching, do remember that electric winches are not continuously rated, as you have in hydraulic and mechanical winches. But even so, electric winching is extremely successful as long as you always use your senses. So important to use your eyes. Your eyes looking for danger. Is the wire rope neatly on the drum? Is the wire rope in good condition? Is the vehicle moving forward as you're winching? In this scenario, at any rate. Use also your ears, remembering that as the wire rope builds up on the drum, there's a greater pull required because we're using that much more energy as the layers build up. So use your ears. Your ears might hear a change in tone as the layers build up. If there's an enormous tension, you may well hear a slight ping of the wire rope. So if you don't use your eyes and your ears, with an electric winch, if you overdo it and stall the winch and its motor, you could well be using your nose. When winching, it's always so important to think what you're going to do. Just think out the recovery before commencing doing the actual thing. The first thing to make sure is to have your vehicle well supported either against the Terrain Master chock tracks here or well roped back to a ground anchor behind, or perhaps another vehicle has a dead weight. But above all, make sure the vehicle is square to your load or square to your pulley block. It's so important that the cable comes onto drum neatly from side to side to side. Bear in mind, all winches work on a gearing principle. Every layer that builds up on the drum here, you can lose anything up to about 10% of the pulling capacity. And that is why all winch systems are designed and rated on the bare drum. That's the rated line pull. Always ensure that you have 4 or 5, maybe 6 turns of wire rope onto the drum to capstan the wire rope to the drum itself. All said and done, the wire rope is only connected to the drum with normally just a grub screw. So by having a few turns on the drum first ensures that the rope is capstan to the steel drum itself. Now you'll notice in this scenario I'm actually standing within the arc between the vehicle, the pulley block and the load we're pulling up the hill. So this definitely isn't a safe place to stand. Never step over a wire rope when it's either in tension or about to become in tension, or you could be joining the girls' choir. It's best to put one foot over it if you have to cross the wire rope. Put one foot on it and spring over to the other side. It would in fact be safer to walk around the back of the vehicle and then come to the side. From this point onwards, you can pull at any angle within the arc. Now where I was standing before on the other side of the arc, you can see that I could be in a dangerous position, especially if something became unattached here. Okay? So as I was saying before, ensure that your hand control cable doesn't fall across the top of the winch, and we're ready to winch away. Thumb up to the load driver. There we go. One small thing though, I must start the engine. It's always important with an electric winch to have your engine running so that the alternator backs up the battery to operate the winch itself. Doing that will ensure your winch for some considerable time. Ideally you want about 1,500 revs, maybe 2,000 revs, to keep the alternator singing away to back up the battery. I fitted a hand control there, which is just a remote choke control to raise the revs. Naturally, when attaching the wire rope hook to a vehicle, you need to be onto solid fixings. It's also a good idea when pulling up a track to try and couple to the centre of the vehicle, as when you were doing perhaps heavy kinetic energy recoveries. Halve the load on the chassis itself by connecting to each side. This is a bridle idea and works very successfully indeed, especially if the vehicle is maybe wandering from side to side up through ruts. You'll always have a central pull. You will notice that the wire rope here is just catching over the ground. If it was very rocky, it obviously could damage the wire rope. If it's just grass, or if it's just earth that's not in too bad a state, you could winch over it. You could put some poles underneath and pull the wire rope over the poles. That usually has the effect of rolling the pole up at the same time. But always be aware of the wire rope wants to be in a straight line where as much as possible between the pulley block or the winch position and the location on the vehicle being recovered. But that's no problem there, but always be aware. Before winching another vehicle up a hill towards you, always make sure that you're well secured back to a decent ground anchor. You'll notice how we've used the chain here to take up the difference between the strop and the vehicle itself. Very useful to give them the adjustment. You can see how the shortening hook goes in between two links and over another to give it strength. And we're over a central point here, which is a good idea. Never ever attempt to hook onto a tow ball, either the ground anchor or pulling somebody to you, if you're likely to be pulling up from the tow ball, because there could be a possibility you would pull the chain or the pulley block or whatever you have on here off. In which case, if that was happening, you would attach to one of the jake rings underneath, or even a pair of jake rings. But this is fine in this case. Using the bow shackle is absolutely ideal to take the two protected ends of the strop into. And to give further adjustment and tightness, we've taken the strop twice around the ground anchor. That makes a very good, strong supporting point for your winch vehicle. I know we've secured the vehicle back to a decent ground anchor using the tree strop and the chain at the back. But if you're working on a hillside and you've got a pair of these Trainmaster truck tracks, I suggest you use these too. Very easy to use, they fold and they drop right into place. Makes a good job. One of the danger points when winching with very, very high loads is when you come off of the first layer and you start to build up on the second layer. At this point the winch is at its most strongest, at its rated line pull. As you start building up, you're actually going to lose some pulling power. And it's as you come onto the second layer, if anywhere is going to break in within the length of the wire rope, it could possibly be there. And talking of danger points, if you have a very high strain, you would be using a blanket somewhere along the length of the wire rope. The reason for using a blanket or an old coat over the wire rope is to ensure that if the rope does break or an attachment point blows apart, the blanket will soak up the energy and reduce risk of personal injury. When going to de-rig, it's quite important, the first opportunity, to put the free spool lever into free spool, so there's no way can you trap your hand or hands in the shackles or the pulley block when disconnecting. Quite easily your load vehicle might jump out of being locked with the handbrake on and could trap your hands down there, so get into free spool as soon as possible. Now with most winching scenarios, single line pull is quite sufficient, provided the hill isn't too steep, or your load is too high, or the ruts are too deep, or what have you. If you feel there's going to be any additional strain than what you would like on your winch, then use the pulley block. The pulley block doesn't exactly double the pulling capacity. If it did that, well, it would be a wonderful world, because we could all have half-size winches. The use of the swing-away snatch block is simply this. It halves the current draw on the battery itself. It halves the load, in other words, on the winch. That's the important thing it does. So we'll use the pulley block now to pull the load up. You might think that when using a pulley block that the load will only come up half the speed. Not so. By using a pulley block, the drum is allowed to move more freely because it's had half its load taken off of it.
When using a swing-away snatch block, be sure not to have the wire rope to and from the pulley block crossing one another or getting trapped. Very important, otherwise you will damage the wire rope very, very quickly. It's best to always have the wire rope well clear. Rig the winch hook well to one side of the winch itself, so as the wire rope goes from the winch drum to the swing-away snatch block and then back to the fitting kit or a ground anchor beside, there is plenty of space between the two lengths of wire rope. It is so important to always rig this fashion. The swing-away snatch block is rated quite sufficiently for just about any load that you would be using with an electric winch. They are designed to take up to an 11mm wire rope.
There are many occasions when you are on a brow of a hill with your winch vehicle that you've got nothing to hook back to. Maybe you're the first vehicle at the top, so you haven't got the benefit of a second vehicle behind you as a dead anchor. By employing a tree or a ground anchor beside you to one side, you can use the wire rope back to that point, having used a pulley block. By doing recovery this way, you're taking off half the load off of your recovery vehicle. But note that as you winch up, the datum point will alter and the wire rope will no longer, after a while, be going straight to your load. It will be coming to one side.
You'll notice that as the datum point is moved to one side in front of the winch, the wire rope no longer comes onto the drum neatly and evenly, and it comes across the drum. You can only winch like this for so long, because as soon as the layers build up on one side, you're only going to start seriously damaging the wire rope. So the tip is, always have your pulley block, wherever possible, directly in front of the winch drum. You can use your winch system to lower a load out or lower yourself back off of a steep hill. But be warned that electric winch systems with brakes inside their drums should only be used for lowering out purposes for 5 or 6 meters or so, because otherwise you will overheat the brake inside the drum. Also, be very careful not to run out of wire rope, otherwise you'll lose your load altogether. It is in fact far more sensible to use a pulley block in the system when lowering out, because this takes off half the load off the winch system just as much when you're lowering out as when you're pulling in. So the pulley block is very, very useful.
One of the best ways to keep your extension wire rope is to keep it in a trail bake tie just like this, with 2 or 3 cable ties or tree ties holding the cable inside. Is absolutely ideal. When you're unwinding the rope from here, just the same as putting a new wire rope onto a winch in the beginning, keep it rolling out so somebody takes it from you. And then it won't get in one almighty tangle. A little bit slower please, Ian. Thank you. Now this extension wire rope is 90 feet long, which is absolutely ideal for most extension winching operations. However, if the wire rope is too long, you can halve the wire rope by putting a pulley block in the middle. That way you don't damage, thank you, that way you don't go and damage the wire rope as you bend it back on itself. Right, we'll set that up now then. So there we are, one 90-foot extension wire rope, halved, because we don't need the overall length. What is important when you're using extension ropes, always use the same size diameter as the wire rope is fitted to the winch. Never build in a weak link, a fuse in other words. The way to store your extension wire rope is quite simply using an old trail bike tyre. Push the rope in, and as you turn the tyre, just push it in, it will eventually go in, tighten up, and it will protect everything inside the vehicle and keep the rope all nice together. And it doesn't take too long either. It's in this method that we store Turfer and Brano wire ropes. Makes a lot of sense when you think about it. When you've finally got it all into the tyre, you can then use 2 or 3 cable ties or tree ties to put around at intervals. That will stop anything from trying to fall back out. Cable ties do the job admirably. After all, if a cable tie can be used to secure a criminal's hands behind his back, they're good enough to retain the wire rope within the tyre. We can cut the odd bits off in a while. A winching scenario that gives the opportunity of making sure that you have an assistant give to the operator instructions of when and when not to winch, the following signals usually apply. When one is required to take up the strain, a raised clenched fist is take up the strain. A raised outstretched hand encircled means wind in, pull up. That hand outstretched facing downwards, pay out, which is lower out. A raised palm of the hand towards the operator, obviously is stop. If both palms go up together, it means please stop quickly. Okay. Slacks in this end. Now even with a slack cable, always stand on the cable when crossing it, because if something did go tight, at least you'll be pushed off of it. Now this is quite wrong, having the thumb through the hook itself. Much better to grasp the hook with the palm of the hand with the gloves underneath. But better still, use the hand saver bar provided with the Super Winch products so your hands are clear of the hook. And better still, when you come to put the hook away on the fitting kit, Use the hand saver bar to keep your hands well clear of the roller fair leads. That is definitely the safest way to handle the wire rope as you put the cable away onto the drum.
Now, it's not going to be every day that you're going to be winching yourself up a 45-degree slope, or indeed winching a load up to you. But 45 degrees is indeed very steep. Now, although the G10 winch at the top of the slope is pulling Ian's green 90 up with reasonable ease, notice the speed of the road wheels, it's not really quite the done thing. When winching up steep slopes, it is far preferable to always use a pulley block, a swing away snatch block. By using a pulley block like this, you will indeed be double line pulling. You'll have a 2-to-1 pulling ratio, which will take much of the load off of the winch system. Notice how the road wheels on Ian's green 90 are still turning at a similar speed to when the vehicle was being pulled up on a single line pull, but there is far less strain on the winch system itself. Still being pulled up very easily. You will appreciate this is a demonstration only. If this was a real recovery, the winch vehicle would be way over the top of the hill. In other words, leaving a space for the vehicle being recovered to end up on. Now we have a triple line pull up the same slope. Triple line pull using 2 swing away snatch blocks. This makes for a much easier recovery. Notice the speed of Ian's vehicle is still very similar to that as before. The road wheels are still turning a similar speed, but there is far less strain now on the winch system. As I was saying before, 45 degrees is very steep indeed, and wherever possible, if not using a double line pull with a single pulley block, do consider using a triple line pull with 2 pulley blocks. Incidentally, where you see the 2 lengths of wire rope between the pulley blocks here on the triple line pull, it is in fact an optical illusion. The wire ropes are passing one another but not touching.
You will notice from this demonstration that by using 2 pulley blocks, the winch turns so much more freely, very little effort indeed. But there you are, that is a 3-to-1 pulling ratio, plus the fact we started with a lot more wire rope off the drum itself, so a better advantage there. Everything is so much more controllable also when using either 1 or 2 pulley blocks. You can go back and stop you can go back so far and then start come up again. It's so much more controllable. Just watch this. Stop the load will be held via the braking system within the drum, and we can winch up from a standing start at that angle, something you would not attempt to do with a single line pull. That done at idle revs. So it stands to reason that the most important accessory to have with your winch, whatever make or type or model, always carry at least one swing away snatch block. Two's even better. With two snatch blocks you can change a direction as well as double line pull. There's lots of different scenarios. We'll send Ian back.
As I was saying before, never secure a winch hook or a strop directly to the top of a tow ball, as there is a fair risk that you will have everything come apart like this. Always use proper securing points of the vehicle. Yes, indeed, one has lashing eyes on the front and rear of a coil-sprung vehicle, but better still, on a leaf-sprung vehicle, use the bumper D rings so often fitted, or the chassis J rings on coil-sprung vehicles, or indeed secure the winch hook direct to the pintle. Well, here we are in our private woodland, and Nick here is attempting one of the many tracks that we have throughout the whole area. What we simply say is, if you can't drive it, to save cutting up the ground further, then get the winch out and pull yourself through to the end. So here we have young John here, Nick's son, in helping to rig the winch up to a tree at the top of the hill, helped by Ron here. Notice how John is fitting a nice good tree strop around the base of a tree, then a nice sturdy tree, using a bow shackle to attach the wire rope hook to the tree strop. As Nick is winching himself up the track, you will notice that he is driving as well as winching. The wheels are just turning just slowly to take some of the strain off the winch system and to give steerage. In this sort of situation, a single line is absolutely fine. Ron here is taking the wire rope forward of the vehicle, giving Nick a chance to get up onto the top. And here you see me pulling myself up quite a steep piece of track. Having rigged the wire rope up to a pulley block in the centre of the track to give a straight line pull.
As you can see, by setting up the pulley block as a change of direction device, more or less in the centre of the track at the far distance away from the winch, you can winch all the way through to the top with keeping a perfectly neat drum. As soon as the wire runs off at a fleet angle, as it has happened now, you can see the rope was pulled to one side. But that's the way to do it. You can see by careful rigging, you can winch so much faster and quicker, and indeed protect your wire rope. Right, maybe a better idea when rigging around the bottom of a bit of a wet tree, go round twice by taking the strop twice around the tree. Mud in my mouth. You would tourniquet the strop onto the back of the tree to stop it from sliding up. In other words, if that lump wasn't there and you went once around the back of here, the strop would slide up, but by going twice around the back, it'll hold it in place. So there, just another little hint. Right, there we are, shackle back into place, but remember to, having tightened it, go back half a turn, so when you've got a weight on there, it doesn't lock it up tight, especially if there's mud in the thread there. Right, let's wait for the next vehicle. Twist in there, that's better. So open the swing away up, wire rope through and run it right round, just like that. Always use a shackle between the adjustable winching chain and the head of the pulley block. By using a shackle through there rather than putting the chain straight through, it will enable the winching chain to settle where it needs to properly, like that. And when you use a winching chain, if I can stand upright on this slippery surface, you put the special shortening hook across a link like that in between two others, and that way it locks itself into place. Very strong indeed. Of course, the important thing is you must only use one particular type of chain, and that is a high tensile chain with a grade 80 alloy hook. Use some of your chain from the front garden. Dividing the front walls will not work. That's normally a long lead chain and of a much lesser quality. I'm standing in the arc of the wire rope here to the ground anchor. It's very, very important that no bystanders, helpers or the winch assistant stands in place, because if something becomes disattached there, you can guess what's going to happen. Always keep well clear, keep out the arc. Remember I said about going over the wire rope, stand on it rather than climb over it. Okay, we're ready at this end. We're ready. I was saying just now, if you start winching and driving in too much anger, letting that clutch out and accelerating, the vehicle can slide off an angle. Let's see what happens when we ask Ron to do just that. Now, as you can see, I'm letting the clutch out, the back spun, the front spun, the wire rope now is no longer coming up, moving on to stop. It might be quicker winching and driving, but not always so successful. Spend a lot of time in re-rigging every few minutes. There they are, that's some brute for you. The purpose of this unusual exercise is to show you what can go wrong when you use a 3-strand tow rope to act as an extension to your wire rope, where your wire rope is not long enough to reach your ground anchor. The simple fact is, don't use a 3-strand rope, because as the tension comes up, you will see the rope itself twist. I'll ask Nick down there to tighten the wire rope. Tighten up, please. See how the 3-strand rope is twisting? What it's doing is actually undoing the lay. Simple as that, undoing the lay. Now that's very bad, because not only is it sort of undoing the lay of the rope, it is actually doing the wrong thing to the wire rope down to the winch. It's actually, in that case, tightening the lay of the wire rope. So they're opposing lays. So the lesson learnt there is, do not use a 3-strand rope to extend. Always use plenty of extension strops like this, tree strops. These tree strops are rated at 12 tonny as a minimum brake strain. The green strops are normally sort of certificated at 2 tons safe working load. You multiply safe working load by 6 to give the minimum brake, so you've got ample strength there within there. You can also use the chain doubled up, so you have 2 runs of the chain also to give an extension. You could use a kinetic 8-strand rope, but that has a different sort of warning attached to it, in that you can build up a huge amount of kinetic between the winch hook and your ground anchor. There are occasions that can be useful, mind you, if you're stuck and you're in a bog, but more of that another time. Right, let's disconnect this and get on with winching. Thank you.
Here I am in a slight predicament. Just over a brow of one of the hills, there's a side slope. It's a track that's used very, very rarely, and following all the huge amount of rain we had earlier in the year, I managed to get myself in a position where the back slid round and fell off the edge of the track. No problem. With a winch handy on the front, whilst Ron is sitting in my driver's seat.
No, don't drive. Just steer.
We winch ourselves out, and as you heard me say to Ron, steer only and winch, not drive, because winching and driving sometimes can make you slide round like a pendulum, send you off the track. And now it's Ron's turn to drive through the track where I slid off, and as you can see, the ground conditions are very slippery, bit of a side slope, enough to make you sweat a little. No problem. Well, perhaps we have a problem here.
I'd like to photograph that. One good reason why you wear gloves, but even spikes of wire rope pieces can go through a glove into your finger. So, always be aware. Okay, is it well in focus?
And now it's Nick's turn to drive the same section. And as you can see, he's sliding off a bit too. Careful, John, where you stand there behind the vehicle. That's it. Keep well behind and not up the side.
That's the hole we mentioned.
Well, here we are in another part of the track where the back of the vehicle is sunk well down into a pretty deep hole. Got the front out, but trapped by the back. Well and truly high centered, but no problem with young John's help in front, rigging the winch. It's out we come. Notice how I am winching and driving, just letting the four wheels turn slowly, just to take some of the strain off of the winch and the ground anchor at the far end. Never believe that you've really got out the track, out of the deep ruts, until you can actually physically drive. You can see that I am in fact still partially stuck. But we're off now. No, still stuck a bit, still reliant upon the winch in front. Lesson learnt is not to uncouple the wire rope hook at the ground anchor until you are sure you have got fully moving.
What have I done? Well, what is technically known in off-road circles as I've got high-centred. In other words, I'm stuck in deep ruts. So only one way for it. If you've got a winch, let's go and get it going.
So here I am taking the wire rope out as far as possible to find a ground anchor well up front in the centre of the track. As you can see, looking underneath the vehicle there, I'm fairly well stuck. What I'm trying to do is to keep the wire rope taut at all times. So just because I'm winching and driving, if I fall into a hole, it's important that I let the clutch back out again so that I'm not overrunning the wire rope. Gently does it, just slipping the clutch just as necessary, just get a slight turn of the four wheels, all that's required. However, when you start climbing, well, you take your foot right off the clutch. If you slip your clutch for too long, you'll simply burn your clutch out. Ron's there in front, just checking where I'm going to, on the state of the wire rope that's on the drum itself, and his hands up, which he says, right, stop, and he's asking me to let the wire rope out so he can sort out the cable. As with all winching, you have the winch operator and a winch assistant. At this stage, Ron is my winch assistant, and he's making a jolly good job too. It's going to give me a signal now for winding in. It does pay to stop and regularly straighten the wire rope out of the drum because it's looking after your wire rope. If you want trouble-free winching and reliable equipment, that's a signal to stop. It's got it neat, and to wind in again. And I think you're just moving out to one side. Okay, and off we go again. So very important, if you overrun the wire rope, just dip the clutch and let the winch take the strain. Well, here we have a situation where sort of up on the top of the hill the ground is so soft. Good use can be made by using a tree to hold the vehicle by place by putting the bumper into it. And here we are assisting Nick up a rather steep part of the hill down the bottom. And we're using, to get the distance required, winch hook to winch hook. This gives a considerable reaching ability of towards 200 feet using standard wire ropes. See how the bumper is held firmly into that tree. Once you've got an electric winch, it's amazing what you can do with it. With the vehicle sort of chocked back properly against a tree or using chock tracks. Wire rope to a chain twice around a log like this, it's amazing what you can shift. This is a very heavy piece of timber here. Been lying here, I should think, for many years. It's pretty well sodden. Absolutely no effort at all in moving that. So just think of the uses you could have for a winch on your Land Rover. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this video and have learnt much from it. I sincerely hope that you will enjoy your off-roading and winching even more now that you have a better understanding in safe winching methods. Remember to wear strong gloves at all times when handling wire ropes and equipment, and make sure that those assisting in the winching operations know exactly the planned routine. All others must stand clear. Remember too to respect the environment and wildlife. Although this video sets out the basics in winching techniques, there's nothing quite like hands-on practice. Hopefully you will pass your skills on to others so that they may winch in safety. Happy off-roading. Dyneema bow rope is a 12-strand heavy-duty synthetic winch rope which is manufactured specially for us. Here I am securing the Dyneema bow rope to one of our big brother EPE12 winches, which has a 12,000 pound pulling capacity. For this extremely powerful winch we are using the 11mm size, but for all 9,000 pounds low profile winches 10mm is quite sufficient. The 11mm here has a braking strain of 12,600 kilos and the 10mm is 9,800 kilos. You will notice that we have fitted here one of our aluminium horse fair leads. Apart from giving a better approach angle, these are also much lighter than traditional roller fair leads. You can also, with care, pull at tight, unusual angles, which you can't do with roller fair leads, as the rope can get caught on the edge of the end profiles which support the side rollers. Also, if your old roller fair leads have rusty rollers, you must not use them or they could damage the surface of the synthetic rope. And talking of damage, the only other obvious warning is, be careful not to bury the rope under the surface of the mud, for fear of catching it on sharp obstacles. Dyneema bow rope is made from high modulus polyethylene SK75 Dyneema. Each of the 12 strands are made up from further strands containing thousands of very fine Dyneema fibres. This creates an incredibly robust, strong and lightweight safe alternative to wire rope. Dyneema bow rope is so much easier to use than wire rope. Here you see me rigging an extension rope, as the main winch rope is not long enough to reach the ground anchor at the top of the hill. Just try throwing a length of wire rope like that. In use, you simply rig and winch with Dyneema bow rope in exactly the same way as wire rope, but with greater ease. Size for size, it is the strongest and most durable synthetic rope available. It is also UV stabilized, giving the rope a long, safe working life. This special, highly visible light blue coating ensures both the rope's stability and abrasion resistance. After manufacturing the 12-strand rope, it is heat set under tension to ensure durability, uniformity and maximum strength. As I have said already, Dyneema bow rope is so easy to use. Simply put the winch into free spool, run off with the rope to attach the hook to a handy ground anchor, return to the winch, re-engage the free spool, take up the slack ready to winch away. There's less effort and therefore less amps drawn when winching with Dyneema bow rope than with heavy wire rope. And should you be in a hurry in a competition situation, having got yourself out of one predicament, to save time, instead of paying back on all the loose rope, simply make a hank and place it in an open-topped box secured to the bonnet. He is stuck again. Just as with wire rope, you can single line pull, double line and triple line, or change direction using swing away snatch blocks as you see here, all with remarkable ease. But the most important benefit is, whereas if a wire rope breaks, you can have horrible dangers of flailing ends of heavy rope with possible terrible consequences. you will have no such fears with Dyneema bow rope, as if it did break through it being cut on a sharp rock or stone, the two ends would simply fall away, creating no danger at all. Always look after your rope. After returning from a winching session, pull off the rope, dunk it in a large bucket or dustbin filled with some soapy water and rinse it off after. Enjoy using your Dyneema bow rope. Now we will go into the storeroom where Trevor, our winch engineer, will show you how to splice it. Here you see Trevor preparing the end of the rope to make a splice. The method we use is to trim back with a pair of very sharp craft cutters about 9 out of the 12 strands at varying lengths to form a tapered point by wrapping the end with insulating tape. Dyneema bow rope has excellent bending fatigue properties and is therefore ideally suited for most diameter winch drums and pulley blocks. It does not curl or kink like wire rope, nor do you get those horrible spikes of wire rope sticking out. After taking a good arm's length, push open a piece of rope and thread the pointed end into and around the tube thimble. Having done this, settle the rope around the thimble and open out a longer portion by pushing it together. You simply feed the tapered end back up through the center by milking it through, by pushing, gripping and pulling the outer back. Work the new splice by pulling the outer portion nicely over the inner, making sure the head of the splice sits well underneath the thimble. Now take a length of waxed whipping twine and using a sailmaker's or carpet thread needle, sew through the rope several times where the two ropes become one. This is followed by tightly wrapping the whipping twine around the splice about 30 times. Then make off the ends by sewing through and knotting them. For the drum fixing, prepare a parallel end for a superwinch product or fit an electrical terminal for other makes as necessary. In this case, make sure that the parallel end fits into the terminal nicely, then crimp it into place. Tape again over the rope and the terminal before using a length of locking wire to give a greater strength to the joint. And finally tape over the lock once again. As with wire rope, it's not the fixing that takes the load, it's the first 6 or 7 wraps of rope that capstans itself to the drum to start winching with. Our Dyneema bow rope is also very durable due to its good resistance to both mechanical and environmental attack. It is not affected by oil or water and is just as strong whether used in dry, wet, cold or in humid conditions. Here you see Trevor showing you a length of polyester rock guard sleeving, which can be supplied as a small optional extra. Finally, he is showing you how to splice end to end, should you be most unfortunate in damaging the rope in use. Cut the two broken ends clean and taper each end as if you were going to splice on a thimble. Again, take a good arm's length up through the centre of the opposite rope, then do the same the other end the other way. Work the new splice, and then for good measure you could seize the centre of the splice where the two ropes pass each other with waxed whipping twine.